Welcome. Imagine, if you will, a figure of absolute, unquestionable power, like the ultimate authority. Now imagine that exact same figure willingly stripping away every single privilege of that power just to become a servant. It's wild, right? Well, today we are exploring a deeply fascinating meditation by Pastor Jeevan Kishore Gurram on a text that has literally shaped history, the Gospel of Mark. We're diving straight into its central paradox and seeing how its ancient blueprint delivers a truly powerful message for us today. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right into this with the absolute cornerstone of the text. Mark chapter 10, verse 45 states that the central figure came to minister and give his life as a ransom for many. So what does this actually mean? The theological theme the source establishes here is crystal clear. This is not your typical ruler who arrives to conquer by force. Nope, this is a ruler who arrives to willingly sacrifice himself. It's a total inversion of expectations, setting up this idea of a servant who pays the ultimate price for everyone else.
To unpack all of this, we'll follow a really clear roadmap. First, the servant-king paradox. Second, Act 1, divine authority. Third, Act 2, the cross. Fourth, 4 lessons for believers. And finally, we'll wrap up with the urgency of Mark. Section 1, the servant-king paradox.
To really wrap your head around this text, you kind of have to look at its architecture. It's like a giant puzzle. Pastor Gurram highlights a very specific number in his meditation, and that number is 16. See, the Gospel of Mark is exactly 16 chapters long. And this isn't just a random detail. It establishes this perfect mathematical foundation for a deeply divided narrative. It allows the whole text to be split right down the middle, perfectly contrasting 2 totally different phases of this figure's life.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the beautiful symmetry of the book. The meditation points out that chapters 1 through 8 are entirely focused on the work and authority of Jesus' ministry. But the very second you cross that halfway mark into chapters 9 through 16, the whole narrative completely flips. The focus shifts entirely to suffering and the journey toward the cross. So the literal structure of the book itself mirrors this core paradox of a king who becomes a servant.
Section 2, Act 1, divine authority.
Zooming in on those first 8 chapters, what we see is sheer, unadulterated power. This initial phase is all about absolute authority over literally everything, both the physical and the spiritual worlds. The text presents a ministry defined by mind-blowing miracles. We're talking power over the chaotic forces of nature, total authority over spiritual entities, and the miraculous healing of physical sickness. It's a very deliberate setup. You see, before asking anyone to accept him as a suffering servant, he is first established beyond a shadow of a doubt as a being of supreme power.
Section 3, Act 2, the cross.
Right at chapter 9, the story takes a massive, sharp turn away from that authority and dives straight into willing sacrifice. Following this timeline, we start with Act 1, which is all about miracles and power. But then comes the pivot, rejection. Religious and political structures start pushing back hard, and that leads directly into Act 2, which is this intense focus on the cross and death. But the story doesn't end there. It all culminates in the climax of the resurrection. So, according to the meditation, the fulfillment of divine purpose here isn't about some earthly military conquest. Instead, it's a deliberate progression straight through death to ultimate resurrection.
Section 4, 4 lessons for believers. Here, Pastor Gurram's meditation shifts gears from historical theology to direct personal application. He actually draws out 4 distinct takeaways for believers: trust in storms, identity in confession, service without recognition, and victory through obedience. Let's walk through this sequence to understand exactly what this ancient text is asking of its modern readers.
The first lesson is trust in storms. The text features this incredibly famous story of the disciples completely panicking during a literal storm at sea, while Jesus remains totally, perfectly calm, sleeping even. The meditation connects this historical panic directly to us today. The main takeaway here is to use this metaphor of storms to rely on that exact same calm authority during our own modern-day anxieties and personal hardships. Because let's face it, we all have those storms, right?
The second lesson focuses on identity and confession. The source emphasizes that it is absolutely vital not just to internally recognize the identity of Jesus as the Messiah or the Son of God, but you have to actually translate that internal recognition into outward action. The text demands an open, public confession of Him as Lord in the reality of your everyday life. It's about living it out loud.
The third lesson is service without recognition. So the crucial point is this. Just as the central figure voluntarily relinquished his rights to serve others, believers are called to serve faithfully even when literally no one else is looking. It's about completely abandoning the need for human accolades or a round of applause. You're meant to let your quiet, unacknowledged service breathe, resting securely in the understanding that God inherently sees and recognizes the work, even if nobody else does.
The final lesson is victory through obedience. The source takes the view here that true victory absolutely cannot be separated from obedience and enduring hardship. They are a package deal. It requires actively embracing the difficult path, the metaphorical cross, because, according to the text, it is only through navigating that suffering and sticking to the path that one can ever achieve the ultimate triumph, which is mirrored by the resurrection.
Section 5. The urgency of Mark.
As we prepare to wrap up this explainer, there is a very specific linguistic quirk Pastor Gurram points out, and it's a real game changer. That word is immediately. The pacing of Mark is incredibly, breathlessly fast. Jesus goes from one town to the next, immediately healing, immediately teaching, immediately moving on. Used dozens of times throughout the text, it physically speeds up the narrative, underscoring this intense, pressing urgency. There is simply no time to waste. The work of the servant is immediate.
Which brings us to the speaker's final invitation. Based on this structural masterpiece and the incredibly fast-paced call to action we just looked at, the meditation leaves us with a truly provocative thought. Will you adopt the urgent heart of a servant and put your faith into immediate obedience? It's a powerful question, isn't it? One that really challenges us to reflect deeply on the amazing insights we've unpacked today.